this webinar. So the webinar is also being recorded now, and that will be put onto YouTube, and we'll get it transcribed as a white paper, and we'll distribute that to everyone who's on the webinar. So we've missed obviously the very beginning of it, but it will go up onto YouTube, so you are able to use that as a reference. There'll be a poll at the end of the webinar, and as I've mentioned, an opportunity for questions throughout. And I'll be providing a free copy of a template document that we've designed for a number of organisations, helping them to develop a mediation program and to persuade board and other key decision makers to release the necessary resources at a time where resources are tight, as we know, to embed a mediation program. So that's something I'll be talking about today, but also we have a template. Very happy to share that with you. So please, if you're having your sandwiches right now, whatever you're doing, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you find it useful. So please do sit back, relax, and enjoy today's webinar, Setting Up a Successful Mediation Scheme. So a little bit about our company. We were set up in 2001. We were a long way ahead of the competition. We were one of the first mediation programs that specialised in workplace conflict resolution and conflict management. We provide a variety of services. Mediation really is at the heart of what we do, but we also work with teams in distress and at times of conflict. We develop internal mediation programs, and we've got a wonderful leadership program called Leaders 2020, and we're running that in a number of organisations, developing the core skills that modern leaders need to handle difficult situations, conflicts, disputes, a wide array of other issues. We've set up over 300 mediation programs. We've got a lot of experience to share with you today. We've seen them work, we've seen them not work. Generally they do work, but we've got a few examples where they perhaps have stumbled or they've not been sustained, and I'll share with you reasons why that's happened so we can learn lessons from those. And our FAIR model, of course, TCM's FAIR mediation model, the Facilitate, Appreciate, Innovate, Resolve model, 9 out of 10 cases referred for mediation are successfully resolved. And that's 90% of all disputes, and we're talking complex disputes. 9 out of 10 disputes are referred. Now, I think that's as close to a panacea as we could probably get. Now, bearing in mind success rates in grievance cases, I'm yet to hear a successful grievance where both parties and the employer walk away hand in hand, skipping through the meadow, saying that was one of the best experiences I've ever had. I've still to hear anyone describe a grievance to me in that way. 9 out of 10 cases successfully resolved through mediation, and that's internal mediation and professional. So we build dialogue, we transform relationships, and we develop great leaders. And this is how we do it. This is the team. We've got a wonderful team, a world-class team, people who are inspirational, passionate, and motivated to help you get better outcomes from conflicts and disputes. Now, we go into organisations and we provide mediation services, and here's just some of us who do that. But our real passion, our real driver is recognising that everyone on this webinar, everyone in organisations has the capacity and the ability to resolve disputes more effectively. And by training as a mediator and setting up an internal mediation program, brings out the inner diplomat. It allows you and your colleagues to deliver better outcomes, better solutions in the way that Owen's described. Building trust, developing compassionate relationships, helping to build resilience, driving employee engagement, promoting better outcomes for your customers. It delivers so many benefits. I'm often surprised that so few organisations do embrace mediation programs, but here's just a snippet, a handful of some of the organisations we worked with last year to develop mediation programs. And we're talking big organisations. These are organisations who do not just flitter money on some new idea or some newfangled scheme that may or may not deliver an impact. These organisations are as focused as you are on the bottom line, and these organisations are committed to getting real value from every penny that they spend. And they see mediation at the heart of their employee relations, employee engagement, well-being strategies, and place mediation at the heart of how they deal with human resources issues and other challenges within their organisations. I'm just in the middle of writing a book, so I'm afraid I cannot help but this is my first opportunity ever in my life to plug a book, so I'm not going to miss the opportunity to do so. So I'm going to plug a book because it's my first chance to do so. I'm going to plug my new book. It's being published by Kogan Page. It's on Amazon already, published on the 3rd of September. It's a Managing Conflict, a practical guide to resolution in the workplace. It is, I am slightly biased, of course, but I think it's going to be a fantastic overview of how organisations are getting to grips with this tough and difficult issue. It's going to provide enormous amount of practical tips and guides. I'm going to share some of them with you today, but if you're interested, please do pre-order that on Amazon and certainly look out for that. So forgive the obvious plug there, but like I said, I've never had the chance to do that before, so I wasn't going to miss that opportunity. So why are we talking about mediation? Well, I've been talking about it for 25 years. You know, I've mediated in community disputes. I've worked in schools, in prisons. For the last 15 years, I've been going into organisations to establish mediation programmes, and I've built a team of people as committed and passionate as I am. But here we have Peter Cheese, the head of the CIPD, saying clearly that they are starting to recognise within the HR community, as with other areas of the modern organisation, that we need to see a shift in the way that we think about employee relations and people management issues. The HR profession, Peter Cheese said at the annual conference and exhibition of CIPD last year, the HR profession is facing a paradigm shift in how we think about business. We're moving past command and control and process-centric models that are bound by rules and policies. What I interpret that to mean is the traditional grievance procedure, discipline processes, bullying procedures, performance management, absence capability, attrition, and so on and so forth are recognised as having a valuable part to play. But what they don't do is they don't drive better outcomes and build stronger relationships. And the CIPD, I'm sure you'll be familiar with some of the reports that have been published by CIPD in the last few years, advocating the role that mediation can play. But what the CIPD reports are surprised about, whilst they advocate the use of mediation and see the benefit of it, there is real surprise at the lack of the use of mediation in organisations across the UK. 9 out of 10 cases are resolved, but only a very small proportion of organisations actually are embracing mediation. And what Peter Cheese is saying is we need to think differently about how we resolve issues. So contextually, when I'm working with organisations who don't have mediation policies or procedures and are reliant on grievance or bullying and harassment or other procedures of that ilk, what I find when I'm talking to the HR community, unions, managers and of course employees, this is what they tell me. Those policies are reactive. You almost have to press the nuclear option in order to get it started. We know if we take a grievance out against our manager, that relationship will never be the same again. That it will damage that irreparably, and it takes a real courage and a real ability to sit down around the table and resolve it. But often, you know, there's a couple of lines dedicated to informal resolution. Well, you know, again, it's not enough. It doesn't help to resolve the issues. What it does do is it puts them in an adversarial process. I'm right, you're wrong. I win, you lose. You're to blame. It's all your fault. We want the organisation to prove us right and demonstrate to us that we're right. Ken, I've just seen you've raised your hand for a question. I'll come to you in a moment and unpause you, and I'd love to hear your question, Ken, just to say I've spotted your hand going up for a question. So the grievance procedures, they polarise the parties. They rarely identify the root cause of a conflict. They're about risk aversion and risk management rather than resolving issues. And therefore, they don't resolve the needs of the business or the individuals and impede creativity. And what those procedures, these are the procedures, remember, that are designed to resolve issues. They create a blame, grievance, entitlement or litigation culture. That's no way to run a successful organisation. And what organisations like Network Rail, like Royal Mail, like EDF Energy, like Lloyds Bank, like HSBC are saying, yes, we have to have rules and procedures. No, we're not about anarchy here. We have to have rules and procedures, but we want to also offer people an alternative way of resolving issues outside of those rules and procedures. And that's where mediation can come in. Ken, I can't unmute you for some reason. I can't see why I can't unmute you, but if you want to unmute yourself.
David,
yeah.
Ken, I've just sent you an audio pin, so you need to enter that, and I think now you're unmutable. I'll just now.
Lily, thank you very much. So Ken, we'll come to you if you've got a question. Oh, Ken, so you've been unmuted. Ken, do you have a question for us?
Yes, just a quick one. Okay, so obviously I can see how this works in a really huge environment.
Yes.
All those big players that you mentioned. But what about the smaller companies like my own, where we've got 700 staff? And frankly speaking, the perception of HR is different. It's you know, people like basically it's not that's HR and we'll get a mediator who's got absolutely no idea what's going on the other 80,000 members of staff.
Yeah.
But when it's 700, everybody knows everybody, and they go, oh, I don't think I can trust Ken because you know, he's in HR and they do work very closely with another line manager. There seems to me to be, and that's the difficulty, I think, in terms of why possibly smaller organizations like mine would perhaps struggle to have an internal mediation system.
Okay, that's a fantastic question. Thank you. And I think other people have probably felt the same way, that if we're a small organisation, we all know each other. And of course, one of the real strengths of the smaller organisation is people know each other, and you have that almost that family relationship and that very close relationship. I think what people have told me they found, Ken, is by embedding mediation into the HR function, or where the HR function perhaps acts as a catalyst or an advocate or a champion for mediation, is it builds trust in the role that HR play. Now, I've got really great examples of where the HR individual, that might even be an office manager who also takes on the role of HR, or if you are slightly larger, 700, presumably you have an HR manager and maybe an HR business partner. They can be really well placed to act as mediators. Now, at first, it's about building trust that they won't make a judgment. So one of the things the mediator will always do, Ken, at the end of a mediation process, and this really builds trust, is we tear up all the notes at the end of mediation. So people know there's nothing going on their personnel file. They can speak openly and honestly. We ask the parties and the mediator before we go into mediation to sign a confidentiality agreement. So again, we know that we're going into the process, it's without prejudice, it's bound by confidentiality. And what happens is they see the HR professional in those organisations acting with integrity, acting in a compassionate way, trying to drive a culture of resolution, managing round table talks in a supportive and collaborative way. And what we see in those organisations is people start to recognise that the HR function is trying to create a culture of collaboration, cooperative, mutual interest-based problem solving. And finally, the other thing that the HR professional in the smaller organisation says to me is, David, what you've just described to me is exactly why I got into HR in the first place. I didn't get into HR to be the custodian of these procedures and policies, although I see they're important. I actually got into HR to drive engagement, to retain talent, to build a successful business. And acting as a mediator, funnily enough, and I don't think this has been designed in, I think it's an accident, funnily enough, I think acting as a mediator takes the HR professional closer to why they signed up to being an HR professional in the first place. And it kind of aligns to what HR tell me they want to be doing. If you like, the fourth and often the forgotten bit of the Ulrich model, the employee champion or the employee advocate, Cam, this bit for me really plays to the fourth part of the Ulrich model. And I think we've often overlooked the employee advocate or the employee champion bit. So I think your point is well made, but there are really good examples of how HR in smaller businesses are using this to drive business success.
Brilliant, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much indeed for that question. So I'm going to mute you again, Ken. Like I said, any questions, do feel free to raise your hand. I love answering questions. What it does mean is we might struggle with time a little bit, but there we go. We can always go offline if we need to. So let's talk about HR. This is a report from the CIPD, and according to the CIPD, staggeringly 30% of your manager's time is spent dealing with conflict at work. And when I do surveys of managers, very few of them tell me that time is well spent. They often describe it as wasted time, as being very difficult and quite a divisive period in their lives. Yeah, that's 30% of time that they should be spent getting your organisation ready for the challenges of Brexit, getting your organisation competitive, building strong, high-performing, productive teams. And of course, the culture in many organisations is, unfortunately, is to avoid dealing with it, because the current policy framework that exists is if the leader or manager puts a foot wrong or says the wrong thing, often they have a grievance or a bullying allegation raised against them. So many managers are very anxious or scared or worried about dealing with these issues because the organisational culture is such that it doesn't encourage dialogue. So managers said to me, mediation, David, what mediation does is it helps to create the culture of dialogue, which is about helping me to be a better leader, a more effective leader, to get better outcomes and move conflict from dysfunctional to a functional or transformational experience, which drives productivity. And let's just have a look at some of the other facts and figures before we get into the detail of how to set up scheme. This is in essence some of the data, but this is useful data because it helps your boards understand the context. So according to the Office of National Statistics, the UK has one of the lowest productivity levels in the G7 nations. Now, there are various reasons for that, but I would say that unresolved conflicts and disputes, tension, disagreements, absence are a major driver of low productivity. And one thing's for sure, we cannot come up with a new Facebook watching Homes Under the Hammer.
And when we see high absence levels and attrition levels, it impedes the ability for us to generate productivity and innovation. And what's going to help us trade on a global stage? What's going to help us develop those trading relationships? It's innovation, it's productivity, it's performance. We need to get better at dealing with these issues. We're ranked 9, another statistic actually, interestingly, I was at an ACAS event, the French workforce could go home at lunchtime on a Thursday and be as productive as the UK workforce. It doesn't bode well in terms of future bilateral negotiations with countries such as the US and others. We need to get better at this, and I think conflict is a big part of the driver. So we're 9th out of 12 of the leading industrial nations for employee engagement. According to Engage for Success, only 30% of our workforce is engaged at one time. According to the Centre for Dispute Resolution and the Confederation of British Industry, this was from 2006, £33 billion a year is lost according to those organisations. And OPP, you'll be familiar, I'm sure, with Myers-Briggs and so on. They report that 85% of employees deal with conflict on some level. 85% of your people are dealing with this. And that's often the result of a lot of the conflict. It's a waste of time and it's a waste of money, and we can ill afford that at the moment. So that's the context, that's the rationale for thinking about making a change to a different approach. I'm just scanning the delegates. I can't see any hand raised and I can't see any questions, but if you do have any questions, I've just spotted one question there. So I'll come back to that question in a moment. So Pam, you're saying that the sound quality is not very good, lots of echo and interference. I don't know if that's the same as anyone else. I hope that the sound quality is improved, Pam. Apologies if that's not great, but I hope the sound quality is good. And Andrew, thank you for your question. Yes, it is. I managed just in the nick of time to press the record button to record the webinar. So let's go into mediation. And what I'd like to do is to spend a few moments talking about what mediation is before we talk about, so to understand, in essence, the context of mediation and how it works, before we look at how to embed that into your organisation. So what is mediation? I think the first thing to say is it's about building trust. It's about, as you mentioned, Owen, it's about restoring relationships and recognising that a breakdown in trust is the antithesis of employee engagement. Therefore, mediation about building trust is at the heart of employee engagement. And Kathy Brown, who I interviewed for my new book, which you might recall I plugged earlier in the webinar, she said to me, David, one of the biggest barriers, if not the biggest barrier to engagement in the workplace is due to conflict and unresolved conflict. That's Kathy Brown, the Chief Executive of Engage for Success. So mediation is a non-adversarial way of resolving issues. The mediator is a neutral third party. They help the parties to have a mutually acceptable outcome, a win-win outcome, by focusing on their underlying interests and needs, not the positions that they've adopted. And this is really important. In investigations or other processes, we follow due process to investigate their position. In mediation, we're looking to get beyond the position to identify their underlying interests and needs. And they're often common. They're often shared. They need to be valued, respected, heard, taken seriously, treated with dignity. These are common to all of us, but we lose sight of them in conflict. And the mediator's job is to help bring that back and get that sense of collaboration and convergence back into the relationship. So we don't tell the parties what they should do. We don't force an agreement on them. We don't dictate what they should be doing. We work on the basis that they have the capacity to resolve their own issues. Bear in mind, 9 out of 10 cases resolved through mediation. That suggests that parties in a dispute do have the capacity to resolve their issues. They don't need to go to determination panels and go through long-winded and often terrible investigation processes for someone to tell them how to behave. They know how to behave. They just need to have an environment where they can be shown the impact of their behaviour and given new choices and new alternatives. And that's what mediation does. It's a voluntary process and it's a confidential, safe process. Wow, it's a very different way of dealing with issues. And this is a typical mediation, a few screen grabs from a mediation process. This is what it looks like. The mediator will meet our two parties before they bring them together. And when they're around the table, the mediator will establish some ground rules, make it a safe space. We invite the parties to talk to each other without interruption. We then invite the parties to have an exchange of views, and slowly the mediator will help the parties to think about the future. What does tomorrow need to look like? And will help the parties to build an action plan and an agreement based on their underlying needs about what needs to happen tomorrow. Very different, very powerful, very effective, very engaging process. And we give responsibility for the resolution with the parties. Now, a lot of the procedures and policies and within organisations, within
within HR as a whole, or what one might call parent-child type situations. If any of you are familiar with Lucy Adams, the former director of HR at the BBC, she's just written a fantastic book, and I would strongly recommend it, called HR Disrupted. Absolutely incredible. And she talks about parent-child relationships in HR. This is about adult-to-adult dialogue. Now, if we treat people like children, we have to then expect them to become rebellious children. If we treat people like adults, they will embrace it and engage it. And mediation is about adult-to-adult dialogue. It's the central message of resolving issues, adult to adult. So mediation isn't just a buzzword. It's not going to be here today and gone tomorrow. It's around and it's here to stay. And I think we'll see in the next couple of years a significant increase in the use of mediation. I've just been part of a major consultation by the Employment Lawyers Association looking at the enhanced role of mediation. So we know we could go back to the Gibbons review, which was 10 years ago, for those of you who can remember. I can't believe it's 10 years ago, when Michael Gibbons suggested that the then dispute resolution regulation should be repealed. In some respects, in the last 10 years, I've been really dismayed at the absence of clear guidance from bodies like ACAS and from the UK government about the absence of clarity about the role of mediation. I think that will change. I think it's already starting to change. But what we did see with the new ACAS code was a greater use of mediation. But if I'm going to be absolutely honest, it was pretty woefully inadequate and lacked clarity. I think it's left a very confused position where we're still reliant on sort of old style methods, and there's a lack of clarity about what's out there. Well, mediation's out there, and I think we're going to see it used much more widely. There's a growing awareness about the real cost of conflict. It's not just a hidden figure anymore. Organisations are rightly concerned about this. And there's a recognition that conflict undermines engagement, well-being, and so on. And mediation, therefore, is a critical part of your employee engagement, your well-being, your performance, your customer care, your Brexit strategies. If conflict undermines, then mediation repairs, and mediation should and is taking a large part to play. Royal Mail's a great example of an organisation who've really placed mediation at the heart of their industrial relations, their bullying and harassment, and now into their grievance policies. Recent employment law reforms are mediation friendly. You know, I ran a webinar with an employment judge and a barrister very recently, and they were speaking very positively about the role of mediation and their expectation in some respects that mediation would be undertaken before cases are coming to the employment tribunal. And I think we will see much more of that happening, much earlier, focus on earlier resolution. And HR professionals, employment lawyers, unions are now actively supporting the use of mediation. Now, bear in mind, in particular, lawyers and HR professionals perhaps in the past have maybe been focused on risk-averse procedures. They're now focusing on something a little bit more about engagement and resolution. So why invest in an internal mediation scheme? Why do it? What are the business benefits? Well, here are some of the benefits. You'd see a reduced amount of time being spent on issues relating to conflicts and disputes. You see less time spent preparing and handling grievances. A number of organisations we work with report anywhere between 25 and a 30% reduction in grievance levels in the first year of introducing the mediation programme. Reduced levels of investigations. Of course, reduced legal fees, compromise agreements, or settlement agreements rather, employment tribunal costs, and so on and so forth. Reduced stress, sickness, absence, and more of this: productivity, goodwill, motivation, engagement, confidence, well-being, resilience, cohesion. These are important characteristics of the successful organisation, but I often see them written into HR strategies. But then when I look at the operationalisation of the HR strategy, we're still reliant on the old tried and tested models, which actually undermine all of these things. Mediation is closely aligned. If you're developing your HR strategy, if you're reviewing your HR policy framework now, mediation will help you to operationalise your core objectives, because otherwise, if we don't, how will we achieve them? And we can't rely on the old approaches, because it's the old approaches that got us into the problems that we're in at the moment. From the human being perspective, it promotes adult-to-adult dialogue, which I've mentioned. People want to be treated like adults, and they're ready to take responsibility for their behaviour and what they're saying and what they're doing. They are. I see it in the mediation work that I'm doing. People tell me they are ready to hear what the other person has to say. So it creates that safe space. It allows those strong feelings, the F word of the modern organisation, the feelings, to be aired and discussed. It develops empathy, insight, self-awareness. Of course, these are the key components of of emotional intelligence. People talk to me about getting, an emotionally intelligent workforce, but when I look at how are you going to do it, there's no substance to it.
Yet mediation delivers the substance to build an emotionally intelligent workforce and leadership and management levels. So it enables the root causes of an issue to be resolved. It develops agreements based on mutual interests and needs and builds resilience in that relationship. So again, I'll do a little scan there. So we're moving into the final part of the presentation. We're going to be talking now about how to embed the mediation program. So, Andrew, you've asked a long question there. You've talked about instances of bullying, harassment, cyberbullying, and harassment in the workplace are increasing year on year. And how will mediation work when allegedly 90% of cases go unreported? Could be that the victims feel inhibited by making formal complaints, for example, power imbalance. Absolutely. And I think people are very fearful about the formal processes, and they're fearful about repercussions. Yeah, when Royal Mail have embedded mediation into their bullying and harassment processes, and they mediate over 30% of bullying and harassment cases that go through to mediation. And what people are coming out of the other side of mediation are saying is that was the best experience I had because I was able to tell you to my face the impact it was having. And what's really surprising, Andrew, and this is very true in a lot of bullying cases, is people do not realise the effect that their behaviour is having. Some people do. You know, there are going to be rogue people in our organisations who are bullies and deliberate. But I don't meet many of them in my work, and I've been doing this for 15 years. Generally what happens is people look at the other person and go, I genuinely did not realise that calling you a waste of space would make you feel so bad. And I didn't realise it. I never recognised the impact it has. Now I recognise the impact, I won't do it. But do you understand my intent was not to cause the harm? So there's a massive dissonance and gap between intent and impact in dealing with bullying. And people can see that. And that dissonance between intent and impact generates power imbalance. So the mediator's role is to reduce the dissonance between the intent and the impact, and therefore reduce the power imbalance and allow the parties to speak up and speak out about their behaviours, the impact of the behaviour, the intention behind the behaviour, and then, and this is critical, the mediator allows the parties to make choices about how they want to work tomorrow going forward. If they don't want to change, Andrew, if they don't want to change the way they behave, then mediation hasn't worked. And there will be other processes and you'll have other solutions and other remedies. But in 90% of cases, the parties look at each other and say, we want to change the way that we communicate. And I think it's a really important stage in the healing, the transformation, whatever we want to call it. It's an important stage in the process. And bullying and harassment policies or procedures that don't contain mediation and don't contain the opportunity for parties to speak out directly to each other, for me, are failing the parties. They're failing the employees. They're failing to achieve a resolution. And they're trying to use a carrot and a stick approach to resolve issues where both the carrot and the stick have failed systematically. Mediation is neither a carrot nor a stick. It's an adult-to-adult exchange between two grown-up human beings to help them resolve their issues. It's fundamentally important, and its absence worries me when I see there isn't an opportunity for dialogue. So we will move into, so there's no other questions that I can see. Again, if you have questions, please do raise your hand. Pam, you've done a thank you. You're welcome, Andrew. You're very welcome. So setting up a mediation scheme, which of course is the main focus, but hopefully I've given you some really useful context there and helping you to prepare your business case and your report using benchmark data. So we're talking here about the modern triumvirate, as I call them in the book. So HR, management and unions, and I know a number of you won't be unionised, but even so, reflect in unions, replace that with employees and how you engage with employees. So the triumvirate in a non-unionised environment would be HR, management and the employee. But in essence what it is about these three key heads of state, as it was in the Roman Empire, but these three key players in the organisation working collaboratively to drive a culture of resolution and to promote an environment where mediation becomes the preferred route to resolution. The first thing to do, I think, if you're going to set up a mediation program is work out why you're doing it. I talked about some of the failed mediation or the less sustainable mediation programs I've set up. The ones that don't work are the ones where there's not a clear evidence base. It's being driven by a charismatic individual. They can see the value of it themselves and they drive it based on their charismatic effectiveness. That's great because it gets the program going, but it doesn't help to sustain it and measure its effectiveness. If you're interested in developing sustainable and effective and long-term mediation programs, my advice to you is do that bit of groundwork at the get-go and do your evidence gathering. So, you know, there's some questions here. There's more questions, and I'm more than happy to share with you detail of our resolution ready evaluation and audits. And of course, we do these for organisations. We did this for Transport for London, London Underground, and then went on to train 100 mediators and about 200 managers across TfL and LUL. So we do these, but you know, there's some questions here that you can do it yourself. So does conflict management feature as a strategic priority? What is the real cost? I'll give you a conflict calculator in a moment to help you figure that out. How many cases do you get? How much of grievance and bullying and harassment? How much are they costing you? How much do you spend on formal processes, settlement agreements, tribunals, and so on? What impact is conflict having on engagement, satisfaction, on well-being, triangulating your data with other data that you'll be gathering? How much time do your managers spend? You know, if you look at the NHS and the Robert Francis QC report, Freedom to Speak Up review, and of course whistleblowing was major news yesterday. It was all over the news on whistleblowing in the NHS as a major issue. We certainly see in the NHS, according to Robert Francis and the staff's review, for those of you from the NHS, you'll remember there's people were dying because people weren't speaking out and there was unresolved conflict. Now, it may not be as extreme for other organisations, but it has a significant impact on your customer experience, patient experience, and so on and so forth. And are we training our managers and leaders to spot issues? Or are we asking our managers and leaders to deal with this stuff, but without any support, guidance, or advice on how to do it? And here's a conflict calculator that we've designed. It's very powerful. It's very simple. It's also known as an Excel spreadsheet, but it's very simple. And basically, we look at all of the various players in a dispute process, in a grievance. And this is something, by the way, if you've got an HR advisor or assistant in your team who's going through their CIPD at the moment and wants some quants and quals experience, it's a great job for them. Ask them to go and pull 3 or 4 grievances out of the file. Of course, you'll have an audit trail of those. Use this calculator, and I'm happy to share with you the Excel spreadsheet so they haven't got to redesign it. Work out who did what. You'll know what their day rate is. Salary divided by 260, of course. That gives you a day rate, or 520 for a half day rate. And then track each of the different stages. Work out how much time was spent and additional costs. And out of the end of that, we'll pop a cost. Now, if you run that over 3, 4, maybe 5 cases, you can then build up a mean cost of conflict. And that cost of conflict, the lowest I've seen has been a couple of £1,000 in an organisation. The highest mean I've ever seen is £46,000. £46,000 mean cost of conflict. I think they were as blown away as I was, and that was tested and retested and retested. £46,000. The norm is somewhere around £10,000, give or take. But it doesn't matter in some respects what it is, how much it is. What it does is it's gathering data that's relevant to your organisation. So when you're presenting to your senior management team, to your board, to your HR strategy team, your HR senior managers, you're able to demonstrate that there's evidence of the need. And that's really important because that will then act as your baseline measures. So how to set up a scheme? I'll hand over to Owen in a moment, Owen, to talk a bit about the training that's required for mediators and how to get the mediators on. So if I can in a moment, Owen, hand to you after this slide. But develop your business case, as I've suggested. Review what's going on in your organisation to gather the relevant data. And it doesn't need to be a horrendous exercise and data gathering. It can be fun, it can be enjoyable, and it can tell some amazingly powerful stories. Talk to your unions, talk to your management team, talk to your occupational health, talk to your dignity advisors, your diversity teams, I think going out and talking to people and hearing what they have to say and engaging them in the process makes a massive difference. Taking your grievance procedure and replacing it with a resolution policy, which I will touch upon, but I've run many webinars on this in the past, so I won't say too much more on that. But scrapping grievance and replacing it with a resolution policy is something you'll know I'm very passionate about if you've heard me talk before. Training your HR, union and management collaboratively. In Parcel Force, we've run, goodness knows, hundreds of training programs, collaborative programs, union, management, HR coming together for 1 or 2 day courses, looking at routes to resolution, building facilitation skills. So there's a collaborative model of shared solutions. So again, within Parcel Force, within Royal Mail, union and management working together to act as mediators, paired up as mediators. It's a fantastic model. Number 6 is recruiting a team of mediators. Well, I'll hand over, Owen, to you in a moment. And then publicising, let people know what you're doing. University of Kent, who we set up a mediation programme for, have a fantastic
website in relation to their mediation program. So if you're interested in seeing how other organisations have done it, if you just pop in University of Kent mediation into Google, you'll see their screen, and it just gives you a feel for how other organisations are promoting it and sharing the knowledge and celebrating what they're doing, and then constantly measuring and evaluating and reporting it back. Mediation does not have special dispensation because it's nice to not be measured for every single penny that you've invested. And if it's going to be taken seriously by boards, by senior management teams, then it has to stand up to scrutiny and it has to deliver value, and that's really important. So you can constantly measure back against your baseline measures and constantly develop a mediation program and embedding it based on evidence of need rather than charisma or resurgence from others. And I grew up in Nottingham. Brian Clough, he actually said this when he was at Derby County, but he will be forgiven. Rome wasn't built in a day, but I wasn't on that job. What that says to me is it can take time to develop a mediation culture, years sometimes, but if Royal Mail can do it, I think any organisation can, big or small. Owen, over to you. I'll stop and have a slurp of my water. I'm also going to see if there's any questions. But Owen, would you like to just talk through a little bit about getting the mediators in and how that process works?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, David. So really important, more and more organisations are recognising just how important it is to make sure that your cohort of new mediators is really top-notch. So a few examples that we've worked with, just a couple of examples: Network Rail, National Express, Royal Mail Group, all examples of where on this training of the National Certificate in Workplace Mediation, an accredited market-leading course on how to really do workplace mediation according to best practice. That's an example of where they took the time to get expressions of interest from people, from employees. In each case, there were literally hundreds of expressions of interest from people who really thought this is something to offer them in their organisation. There was a whole process of sifting through it, like a recruitment process you'd expect. There'd be a formal conversation with each person in turn to make sure, has that person got the motivation and that mindset, as well as the skill set to be able to mediate according to best practice. So really worth, at the front end, taking the time to recruit people who really you feel will represent this function as effectively as possible. Now, just very briefly, the structure of the National Certificate of Workplace Mediation. We've been running this for over 15 years when thousands of delegates have come through this course. And really it's very simple. There's a whole blended learning approach, and everything that's covered on this course, from the causes and the costs of conflict, really understanding that as a foundation, right the way through to practicing and understanding the skills required to mediate, summarising, reframing, active listening, to name a few, as well, of course, as looking at the process of mediating. And for us, as David mentioned, that look consists of the FAIR mediation framework, so facilitate, appreciate, innovate, resolve. In short, our course really focuses on a blended learning approach. Everything is rooted in sound theory and scholarship, but our emphasis is very much on an experiential, practical learning environment, because at the end of the day, we know that people are going to have to take those skills and go straight back into the workplace and use them from day one. So that's where we're coming from a lot of. So in terms of our accreditation, when I speak to more and more clients who are interested in this, the accreditation, that credibility within their organisation is absolutely critical. And for us, we've partnered with two organisations in particular. So our course is accredited by the Open College Network, and has been for many, many years. It is a flagship of learning, and it's a real benchmark of quality. Also for TCM, we were designated a sole, and in fact are still the sole Centre of Excellence by the Professional Mediators Association in 2016. And the Professional Mediators Association, of course, is the premier trade body for mediators in the UK and beyond, and it's working very successfully. So for us, we recognise that that benchmark of quality is absolutely critical, and all people who go on that course can be sure that they pass that assessment. And yes, there is an assessment there because we want to be a rigorous sign of quality. They will be able to become associate members of the Professional Mediators Association, and of course have that accreditation by the Open College Network. Final thought before I hand back to David is that we also recognise the importance of that support and aftercare for mediators. People come away from the course fired up, but actually what comes next? So for us, As part of our whole package, the holistic approach, we really emphasise a standard, the refresh, recap, reassure sessions for all delegates 3 to 6 months after their initial training. And that way we can identify remaining challenges, collect stories of best practice, and really support development of those key skills. Also, we offer a hotline for all mediators that come through our doors for up to 12 months. We get people calling us up at all times, from backs of stairwells to outside mediation rooms, not quite sure what to do. So we recognise the need for that constant support. And also the emphasis on CPD events. So just to name a few examples, working in partnership with the Professional Mediators Association very closely in 2017, got all kinds of events, just to name a few. Negotiation skills, coaching questions in mediation, mediation tools and techniques. So we're really trying to cater for the core skills of mediation, but apply it to a whole wide variety of different areas to support the kinds of cases that mediators are going to face in today's workplace. And the final thing, I would be remiss if I didn't include just a little quote from one of our delegates, a lady called Priya Vora, Employee Relations Manager at Bloomberg, who took her qualification in February of last year. And she just said this: TCM provides absolutely fantastic training, which is full of practical aspects that draw out all of the skills we never knew we had. The training was delivered exceedingly well, and it was very interactive, which made it easy to understand. And for me, that really sums up our whole approach and what delegates could expect from the course. Happy to hand back to you there, David.
Owen, thank you so much. Really, really great to hear that. It's the amount of support to get the right people in, because if we get the right people into a mediation program, it can really make it. And what we find is that the mediators also become the champions of the mediation program. They become the passionate advocates who really help to push mediation forward. And in one organisation we've been working with, those mediators have also developed listening sessions. They go into teams and help teams talk about some of their challenges. We've also seen mediators training managers and leaders up in terms of having conversations. So the mediators don't just mediate, they're out there helping to create the kind of culture which supports the development of collaborative solutions in conflicts, but also across different aspects of change and crisis management and leadership development. So mediation and having a pool of mediators can be such a powerful and effective way of creating the kind of culture that you want within your organisation. Now, I was at this point wanting to hand over to Julie, but I can't see Julie on the system, Lily. So I don't know if she was going to dial in for 1 o'clock, so hopefully she hasn't dialed in and dialed back out again. But let's just see if we can find Julie. Otherwise, what I will do is I'll just play a little video from Lloyds Bank who've done something. So if we can see if we can track down where Julie planted, so I'd be really keen to hear her experiences of developing a program at Brandon Trust. So while we're trying to find Julie, this is the business case template that I'll send out to you after this event. This can be a really useful way of presenting to boards and senior management teams. Some of you will be no doubt familiar with developing business case, in which case, you know, forgive me for telling you things you already know. But for those of you who haven't developed a business case, this can be a really useful document to help persuade others to sign up and subscribe to what you're trying to achieve. So in your document, you'll set out your vision and objectives, what the current context is as using the data we've talked about, the evidence, you know, that benchmark data, looking perhaps at other organisations who've experienced a similar situation as you, who the key stakeholders are, what are your current internal factors in terms of contribution to conflict, what are your external factors, you know, will this affect your relationship with your customers, your suppliers? A number of organisations would use mediation on the supply chain as well as within their employment disputes. Now, what's your project plan? What are your key milestones and objectives for the next 3 to 5 years? So planning ahead, and having a planned ahead and well thought through mediation business case can be really effective in terms of persuading boards that this is a long-term initiative. It's not a sort of fly-by-night program, and this again gives them reassurance that this is something worth investing in. You know, what are your resource requirements? Just to give you a figure, for an organisation who want to perhaps train a dozen mediators, this might not be so relevant for smaller organisations where it might be 1 or 2, but if we just take a dozen mediators, that would be an organisation of say 3, 4, 5,000 headcount. With all of the setup, the organisation, the training, you're probably looking at a budget of around about £20,000. Now, bear in mind that most settlement agreements are probably worth more than that. You could argue that if the mediators prevent one settlement agreement, one employment tribunal, or one unnecessary conflict, the return on investment would be achievable.
Looking at who will support you, obviously we'd like that to be TCM. And then what's your anticipated return on investment using your measures? So this is a really robust business case that stands up to scrutiny at board level and is certainly, as I said, something that's worth doing as part of setting up the successful mediation programme. Any news, Lily, on Julie? I can't see her on the...
Owen here, David. No, I'm afraid I don't think we have Julie on the line at the moment.
Okay, well, that's a shame. Let's see if we can get her on. I was very keen to hear, I'm sure you were as well, to hear her experience of setting up a mediation programme. They've won awards for the work they've done in Brandon Trust. They've trained mediators. They've also trained an array of managers in sort of facilitation and mediation skills, and has very, very big impact on their organisation. So hopefully Julie will be able to come and join us. But again, just a reminder, we'll come into the end of the session in a moment, but if you've got any questions, please do feel free to ask them. So finally, I think I'm just moving on into the sort of policy suite. It's very difficult to set up a mediation program, an effective one, where it's acting in opposition to the HR resolution, to the HR suite. So we've developed a suite of policies at TCM called the HR resolution policies, which transform, if you like, the existing approaches for conflicts and disputes, and they deliver dialogue instead of mistrust. It's about building empathy instead of blame, and innovation instead of dogma. And one of the policies in particular that we focused on is the grievance procedure, which we've remodeled the resolution policy. Now, if any of you are interested in receiving a free copy of the resolution policy, please do email me after this. I'm happy to share it with you. It's fantastic. A number of organisations, Lloyds Banking Group, Kent County Council, big hospitals, we're working with a number of other organisations to embed resolution policies. So we're starting to see it's becoming very widespread and offering a very meaningful and timely alternative to grievance. Please do send me an email if you want a copy. I'm happy to share that with you. So look, let's play a short video from Lloyds Bank, who have embedded a resolution policy.
For a little over 4 years now, developing our mediation strategy, which is now what we term to be issue resolution. So what we've done is work really hard with David and the team to develop that professional mediation
Oh, that appears to have just frozen.
expertise within the organisation, and that expertise sits in my team. And we've used that expertise to make tangible differences in terms of the way we manage conflicts in the organisation. So what that helps us to do is think very differently about resolving issues informally rather than rely on formal processes to help us to do that. Certainly in terms of results, we've seen our harassment numbers pretty much halve in the time that we've been doing what we've been doing from an issue resolution perspective. Our grievance numbers are down. We are still working really hard to create an issue resolution policy framework rather than have that reliance on grievance as a policy. If I look at what we've saved the organisation from a financial perspective, when we assess the cost and time of mediation versus formal grievance and harassment, that is in the millions already. And the case is compelling for us to continue on the journey. There's still lots to do, but I think we've come quite some way. When you look at having a grievance policy in comparison to issue resolution, what you've got invariably is formal, protracted processes that ultimately don't do anything to restore working relationships, whereas issue resolution is absolutely about doing that and making sure that you can do that bit for engaging with the workforce. Mediation, for me, absolutely recommend that to other companies because that's what restores relationships, that's what allows companies to prosper.
Wow, millions for Lloyds Banking Group, and that's just the visible costs to that organisation. So Lloyds Banking Group are a number of organisations now placing mediation at the heart of their resolution and issues resolution, their employee engagement and other strategies within the workforce. And they're one of a number of examples that are being drawn out, and we've got case studies at TCM and others where mediation is having a similar or if not more significant impact. So drawing the session to a close, we have a poll in there. I'm very, very sorry that Julie, you are on the session, you're here now. Julie, let me unmute you. Julie, hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. Julie, thank you so much for coming in. We're just coming to the end of the webinar now, but look, thank you so much. Julie, could you just say a few words about what you've been doing at Brandon Trust and the kind of impact it's been having?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so we set up our internal mediation scheme now a couple of years ago with the help of TCM Group. We trained 12 people to become mediators internally. So these are all people who've got kind of day jobs, and they're doing this in addition to their day jobs, me being one of them. And as head of learning development, I also coordinate the internal mediation scheme. So since that time we had a big launch with the scheme. We did a lot of promotion. We went around to all our managers talking about mediation, what it means, the benefits and all that kind of thing, and particularly with our HR colleagues as well, so that they were clear. They were clear in their minds as when would be a good time to promote or recommend mediation if they were being, where people were sort of putting in grievances or complaints and that kind of thing. So yes, we did all that, and after that, so initially referrals were sort of fairly slow coming in, but I'd say in the last 12 months has sort of got a little bit busier really. So we have managers who refer people in for two-party mediation. As I say, we've done a few of those, and and lots of successes really. So and obviously we don't do a huge amount of follow-up. We do a little bit of follow-up afterwards. So I'm not kind of sure what the picture is sort of later on down the line, but for sure they are people who, had they not had the mediation, would have gone down a kind of grievance route and come out of it very unsatisfied really, or some of the people had already started kind of a grievance process, and the mediation helped to sort of halt that on the way. We've also had circumstances where I've had managers contact me about a referral, started to put things into place, and then they've come back to me and said, actually, do you know what, it's fine, the people have gone off and sorted it out themselves. Because I think what it's helped is managers to sort of think about having a different conversation with two people who are in conflict, talk to them a little about mediation, what it is, and about it being an adult-to-adult approach. And maybe it's because people have thought, oh gosh, I don't want to go through something like that. It's just made them talk to each other, and they've managed to sort it out. So that's been interesting as well. There's been a couple of occasions like that. We've also now offering team mediation as well. We were trained as through the TCM Group as well in team conferencing. We had a 2 days training on that, which was very good. So we're now offering that as part of our offer, alongside our coaches, because we've got an internal coaching program as well. And so what we're finding is mediators and coaches, that there's lots of crossover. So we're joining together on lots of kind of initiatives and activities, and promoting sort of both things at the same time. So where we've got people having gone through mediation, then we're now able to sort of signpost them to post-mediation support as well. So it could be them thinking about having some coaching sessions, for example. And our next step is to look more into conflict coaching now as well, so that we can add that to our offer, so that where people maybe haven't had the chance to have mediation, but what they want to look at is how they deal with conflict themselves as an individual. So so that's kind of a little whistle-stop tour of where we're at the moment.
Julie, thank you so much. Someone's asked you just say a few words about Brandon Trust and just the sort of the size of the organisation. Would that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Sorry.
No.
So Brandon Trust, we're a charity. We support adults and children with learning disabilities, and at the moment we have around about 12,000 staff. So that includes bank workers as well, or relief workers, and we're spread across the southwest, Gloucestershire, sort of down to Cornwall, and then a bit in Oxfordshire, and then a little bit of southwest London. So we're very kind of spread out as well. So as far as mediation is concerned, I aim to have a couple of mediators in each of our kind of regional areas that we've got, which we've still got at the moment, even though we've had a few people sort of leave and stuff. So so there's always somebody kind of fairly local to help with the promotion of the scheme and that sort of thing, albeit they might not be the person that does the mediation in the end, because we try and make sure that they're not as too close to the parties as that, really. So yeah, and we are going through, as you can imagine, like all other sort of social care organisations, huge sort of changes at the moment as well with all the austerity measures, and so things like mediation are really come to their fore at the moment, because lots of managers are having to have difficult conversations with people. So that's another thing that's on our agenda, is we're going to roll out some having difficult conversations training that we've, as a group of mediators, we've put together ourselves, so we're able to sort of do that internally now. And it's, it's never been more sort of pertinent than it is at the moment, really, I suppose. Yeah.
Julie, thank you so much. And can you just very briefly, what do you think is the key benefit of having gone to all the effort that you've done to embed this culture of mediation within Brandon Trust? Can you articulate for listeners what the benefit has been for your organisation?
I guess one of the main benefits is that it's helped us to sort of put a mirror up to ourselves, really, I suppose, and look at the skills about, particularly our frontline managers, those people who are, so we offer support to people that might be in their own homes or in a care home environment, but it's those frontline managers that are really key to the whole thing, sort of holding it all together, that making sure that staff get their training and all that kind of thing. And it was sort of putting that mirror up to ourselves and seeing that actually having the ability to have difficult conversations with people, to see when conflict is arising, to nip it in the bud, rather than sort of think, oh, it's just going to go away. I think that's been one of the main benefits, because particularly for that level of management, because they're usually people who yesterday they were a support worker, today they're a team leader, and they're managing probably the same people that they were support workers with. So yeah, there's been lots of benefits, but that's just one of them, really. Yeah.
Julie, thank you so much, and thanks for joining us today. It's really been fantastic to hear your insights and your experience, and one of many organisations in the UK now who are embracing mediation, and thanks to everyone at the Brandon Trust for your passion and support for this approach. And Julie, thank you again for being part of this session today. It's much appreciated.
You're welcome. Yeah, sorry I missed the rest of it, but I hope it was helpful.
So I'm going to put you back onto mute. We're going to call the session because we've gone over time, but I think that's a good sign. And a lot of people have stayed. A number of people haven't been able to stay for obvious reasons because we are over time, but we're coming to the end of the session. So what I wanted to do was to put a little poll up, and based on what you've heard, based on your experiences and your understanding of what's been said today, are you ready to consider setting up a mediation scheme within your organisation? Is this something that you would be interested in doing? So there's a little poll in front of you there. Is this something you're looking at doing, or are you persuaded you should be thinking about? If you're not sure, of course, the old maybe button is there as well. So please do fire away if this is something that's of interest to you.
David, just to highlight, I've got a hand raised as well. So someone wants to ask a question.
Lily, thank you very much. Let me have a look at that. Okay, let me just take this poll then, and then I will. Okay, so we have had 60-odd%. So I'm going to keep the poll open for another 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. And you will see in front of you now, you should see on the screen in front of you, let me just check, yep, you should just see the poll results. So 26% of people, yep, this is something you are interested in. 21% of you, this isn't something you're looking at, but 53% still to be persuaded.
Be very interested for each of you to have a conversation. Obviously for the people, yes, then we'd love to support you developing the mediation program, and please do contact us to have a conversation with us about how we can support you. For those of you who are no, I'll be interested to know why not. Is there another way that you're thinking that mediation could be used, or these approaches could be used? Is it simply not right for your organisation, or is it just that a mediation scheme isn't right? Please do let us know. And for the 53% of you who are a maybe, then it sounds to me like there's a decision still not being made yet. And it'd be great to hear what are the factors as part of your decision making, what would persuade you one way or the other in terms of the use of mediation. Again, please do let us know. We're really keen to talk to organisations about their experiences, their needs, their goals, to design in the right programs for them. Now, Lily, you've mentioned that there is a person who is wanting to ask a question. So let me just try and find that person.
I think she's put her hand down now. I can't see it. Yeah, it must be a mistake.
Okay. Thank you, Lily. Okay, so thank you very much. So just in terms of, you know, we're a small business. We do fantastic work. So obviously this is about sharing best practice with you. This is a free webinar. It's about us sharing what we do, how we do it, how we work with you to help you create a culture of resolution. But I'm obviously here trying to promote what we do. It's an amazing business. So I want to just share with you at the very end of the webinar. We're available to provide a free consultation with you. If you are in the no, in the maybe or the no or the yes camp, we can come on site. All we ask, cup of coffee. We love a cup of coffee. Owen, we're more than happy to sit down and just talk with you for a couple of hours. What is it that you need? We can undertake the resolution review that I talked about, although I'll be providing you data. You can do it yourself. We can do that for you. Sometimes it has greater validity if it's done by an outside consultancy. We provide the accredited mediator training, which Owen took us through so eloquently. We provide mediation services, mediation training, investigations, support, coaching. Our Leaders 2020 program, which I won't talk about here because we run webinars and activities on that, but it's a fantastic program. And of course, we help to set up award-winning internal mediation schemes. So thank you so much. Thank you, Lily, for setting this up today. It is much appreciated. Yes. Owen, thank you. Oh, sorry.
Can I jump in one more time?
Of course you can.
Just, James Wilson has sent in just a few questions.
Oh.
He just, Julie actually answered the question. He wanted to know how large Brandon Trust was. And he also said, thank you to Owen, and he can back up the value and rigour of the NAT cert training from TCM. So thank you.
There we go.
James, sorry.
James, thank you very much. The check's in the post. That's a joke, by the way. There's no check in the post, James. Thank you for your kind feedback. It's much appreciated. We're trying to get into social media. Lily's dragging us all into the 21st century, so I can't help but have the social media icons up there. LinkedIn, for those of you who know me, I do put a lot onto LinkedIn, and if we're not connected, let's track each other down. But for now, sorry we've gone over time. There was so much to say. We've had some great questions. Please do email me with questions. Put them onto Twitter. @ the TCM Group is the Twitter handle. Track us down on social media. I hope it's been useful. We'll send out the link. I'll send out the documents I promised. Probably be, I think, Monday now, Lily, by the time we've done everything. And for now, thank you so much, and have a very lovely rest of the day today, and hopefully we'll have the chance to meet with each other and talk with each other again. And you should receive a little evaluation form or closing document. Please do give us your honest feedback. We really do value it for future webinars. Thank you all. Take care and goodbye.